Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is about the root cause of 99% of frustrations and arguments in your relationship.
Are you saying 99% of the frustrations in a relationship is going to be discussed in this episode?
Yes. Now, we don't have the scientific data on 99%, but it is the root cause almost all of the time of what is actually causing these frustrations and arguments.
So think for a moment, how easy and free-flowing would your relationship be if you never got upset or frustrated?
No.
Now, is that really possible? Maybe not. Probably not, because we're humans and that's kind of just part of the human experience. But whether or not it's possible is started to make us really think and kind of drill down within these challenges as to, well, what's the root cause of that? Like, what's the root cause of upsets, frustrations, and arguments? And it led to us doing research, really diving into this over the years, and it is what we see all the time. And Aaron, you want to do the grand reveal?
Well, and it really is one thing. So by you knowing this one thing, you really do dramatically decrease the amount of upsets and frustrations. So what is the answer here? Well, I want you as a listener just to think. What is it that causes you to feel upset, to feel frustrated, or we might say disappointed? Well, all of the time, it is your expectation.
Expectations. Really get that. We're going to go deeper into it.
Expectations are the root cause of all your upsets. You cannot be upset. You will not be frustrated if not for an expectation. Now, maybe you've come across an Instagram post that says something about expectations, but here is the real thing. One more layer deeper. It is actually not just expectations, because as Jocelyn, you can tell us, you're always going to have expectations. It's only when they go unmet that you will be frustrated, you will be upset. Otherwise, you wouldn't. So yes, it's expectations, but it's when they're going unmet.
Well, even before we get to relationship examples, think about in life, right? If you go to a 5-star dinner and all of a sudden the waiter is rude and your food is cold, you are even more upset. Why? Because you had the expectation, this is a 5-star restaurant, I should be getting the best experience, right? Or if you go on a vacation and you were expecting it to be sunny and, great weather, and then it's now raining and you get sick, you're more upset because you had that expectation. So in all of life, it is this.
How many of you have gone and gotten a new car? Right? For many people, it's not the best experience because you have to deal with
the salesman.
Yeah, the salesman. And why is that such an upset? Because there always seems to be what? A hidden fee, another price, something else you got to pay for, the 5 years of oil changes, the powertrain warranty, the this, the that. And you could be having a great experience up until probably you go see the sales manager or the finance guy in that back room, right? You're like, okay, we got this great deal for this car. And all of a sudden it's like, I say this because Jocelyn has seen me come out the back and it's like, what happened back there?
It's like a war zone.
And what changed? Well, it was just that I had an expectation I had negotiated the price and the vehicle and the color and everything until I went in the back, and now my expectation is now unmet.
Exactly.
Right, so we're having fun here, but literally you can only be disappointed in your relationship.
And life.
And, well, yes, we gave you some life examples. So my point was, all of life, expectation. But in your relationship, the principle holds true. You're only upset based on an unmet expectation that's happening between you and your partner.
But wait a second, Aaron, isn't the secret to a great relationship to remove all expectations and just kind of lean into exactly how your partner does things and just surrender into it all?
Well, that's why I'm the greatest partner there is, because I don't have any expectations.
The thing is, you guys.
No, that's wrong.
It is impossible to remove all expectations. Why? Because as human beings, our brains are like prediction engines. And from our upbringing and our experiences, we have this blueprint for how we want life to look, how we want our relationship to look, and just our experiences throughout life create expectations. I expect a husband to be like A, B, and C. And I expect a household to be like this. And we just create these unconscious expectations because our brain is sorting. I like this, I don't like this. I prefer this, I don't prefer this. This is what I want, this is what I don't want. So our brains are like predicting things and also sorting, and our brains want predictability. So we kind of create this blueprint and framework for this is how I like things to go. And then when it doesn't is when it's like, no, this is not what I wanted and expected.
Which you might not actually realize until you're in that moment. So it's not something you can always foresee ahead of time. And let me give you one more quick shift to this. It's also, you could replace expectation with desire. So when we get to that, we could talk about, which we won't here, but so Buddhist philosophy, right, is that you want to live a life that's free of suffering. They say that suffering comes from desire. And it's not exactly true because of what we're saying here. It's unmet desire. It's unmet expectation. You cannot be a human being striving for anything new in your life, which we would call creating things. You might create things on the material plane. You might want to create things on the emotional and mental plane. You may want to create and pursue and seek things on a spiritual plane. This is what gives your life that momentum and that fuel. It's purpose, it's passion, it drives you. So you can't live, well, you could maybe live a life without desire, but it would be super boring. I mean, I don't know, you would have no life energy.
Yeah.
So it's not about any of that, but you could replace it with desire. And as you live your life with your partner, you're going to come to new realizations of things you desire because that's the nature of living. So you can't get rid of that.
Yeah.
But you don't have to.
Well, and we're going to go into some specific examples and then also the errors that people make with expectations, because as we covered already, right, it's not possible and the goal is not to remove expectations. So what we want to first cover and have you understand is that usually people don't identify the expectation. They just know and they only vocalize the complaint or the upset.
I mean, it's really worth saying that again.
Yeah, so they don't identify the expectation. They just know what they're upset about or they're frustrated about, and that's what they then vocalize. So you go to your partner, here's my upset, here's my frustration, and it kind of stays, you're stuck there until you do the deeper looking at the expectation, which we're going to go into. So do you want to cover the first example that we can give people for this?
Well, we wouldn't even be able to give you a better example than literally what we have revealed with couples on, yes, our coaching, but actually even our breakthrough sessions. This is one of the primary things that we cover because this creates a huge breakthrough.
Yes.
So I'm literally going to read examples of actual people, leaving the names out, of course. But again, we wouldn't be able to do any better coming up with things than what people have actually said. So first example, this partner was upset because of this like shock and surprise by their partner leaving the house and going to the store. And that caused her to feel abandoned and that she had to handle everything. They have 2 kids on her own.
Yes.
So that's the upset.
Well, and there's a second part of the upset was that she feels that she doesn't get a break at all where he can just leave. Yes,
that's true. Now, I mean, is that sort of valid? I mean, that's in her experience. So it's not to invalidate that experience that she's having, but what she was communicating, and you, the listener, you have to get this. What you communicate is just like what she did. He came back, and what did she say? I can't believe you just left. You abandoned me to do everything on my own. So you're verbalizing the complaint about the upset. And that's where, I'm going to be bold, you, the listener, this is where you stop. This causes problems.
And the argument,
because your partner's going to get defensive. I could even feel it for him. I went to the store to get stuff for us. I am doing something to benefit the whole family. How are you going to get upset at me? So you could see why this is tricky. So when we worked with her, the expectation then was that he would check in on what was needed around the house or if she needed help before heading out.
And she never vocalized that. And actually, she didn't even realize
That
that
is
till we
huge.
dug deeper.
Key.
Because all that was present for her was the frustration.
Right.
Well, why? Because, of course, until you listen to this episode, you don't know to ask yourself, okay, if I'm upset about this, what is my expectation? So she didn't know to ask herself what her expectation was. Second example, in this partnership, there was an upset because he intervened when she was handling a tantrum with their child. And not only did he intervene, but he would use a completely different tactic than what she had already started. And this was very frustrating. It would trigger arguments. She would, just really take it personally. Now, the expectation when we took them through our process, which, by the way, we have a copywritten process that we take couples through with these expectations, and it requires some visuals that we show. We'll tell you at the end of this session how you can actually go through that with us on a session. But the expectation in this example is you would let me finish my process and or ask me before you intervene, right? So like a two-parter to the expectation. You'll let me finish. Because I started it, you're going to trust me to finish it, or you're going to ask me before you intervene. So it's, again, she didn't know to even vocalize that. What she knew was, this is the upset that I have.
I hope as a listener, you're getting the significance of what we're saying, because it seems so closely tied together. It's why you don't really get to this level, because what does she do then? Again, she vocalized the complaint. Don't be intervening or interrupt and jump in. But you need to look at, okay, if that's the upset, what must my expectation be? And we'll get to the next level of what you then do with that. But let me give you one more example. The upset was feeling like he pays the price or is punished when he makes a mistake. Now, it also felt like if he was to say that he was sorry or apologize, bring forth a mistake, that it would be used against him later, right? So that's the upset. It's almost like he could never apologize or admit something because he would be punished, pay the price, or be brought up again later. So the expectation was that he would have or be given the grace when a mistake was made. And in essence, the expectation is that it's okay to make mistakes.
Well, and yeah, he had much more detail to the expectation he had about how it would be discussed and kind of how he would be talked to when a mistake is made. And that's really,
the next part of our entire process. But, we couldn't give any better examples than ones from people that we actually took through this process. So again, I know we're probably saying this a lot, but you can't just stop and look at your upset and then verbalize that as a complaint to your partner. You need to look. If I'm upset at something, I need to stop for myself, because this upset is basically being self-generated because of some unmet expectation I have. And you rarely, if ever, pause to actually identify clearly what that unmet expectation is.
Now, you listening to what Aaron just said, you could go, okay, so then if I identify this, is my goal to make myself get over that expectation? Is it wrong that I have that expectation? No, we're going to go into some of the mistakes, because actually, again, you're going to have them. There's nothing wrong with having expectations. Are there some that maybe are unfair or unrealistic? Yes, that would be a whole other conversation about unfair, unrealistic expectations. But here are some common mistakes that we find with couples. Is that when they go to discuss these topics over and over again, parenting, money, household things, intimacy, and they talk about the frustration, or they even go, okay, let's discuss expectations, they stay too vague.
Well, if I can, let me be the most clear I can.
Sure.
Because you said when you go to talk about it, you go to talk about it in one of two ways. you complain. So that's number one. Number two is you've now identified for yourself what my unmet expectation is. So an entirely different way to communicate with your partner is, hey, I realize I've been walking around upset because I have this unmet expectation going on.
Yeah.
This is an entirely different way of communicating than trying to communicate about one of the subjects you brought up and then still just verbalizing where you're upset.
Yeah, and then when we're guiding couples through this process and we let them have a first attempt at discussing the expectation, they often, until we guide them further, are too vague in it, right? So they can start by just using terms like, well, I'd like more quality time, or I want you to put more of an effort into our intimacy, or I'm really needing more help with the kids and around the house. And they think that, yeah, go ahead.
Just the very most clear. So now what we're saying is you're in the second scenario where you're now communicating about your expectation. Yes, we're talking about it being too vague. So what it would sound like is, hey, I realize that my expectation was or is for us to be more intimate. So now you're doing a good job of expressing what the unmet expectation is, but now to your point, you would not be doing a good enough job if it's too vague.
Exactly. And the flaw in thinking that we see with this is they should know what I mean. And so we can have this, flawed thinking of, well, when I use words like that, like I'd like more quality time, I want you to put in more of an effort around the house or with kids, that the flaw in thinking is they should know what that means. Like they should be in my mind. And I know we all know that phrase of like, they can't read your mind, but it's funny because we still operate sometimes like they should be able to, or that they think the same way. But you can have completely different definitions for effort around the house, what intimacy means, what quality time means. Respect, what respect means. So that's the first kind of error that we see with expectations and flaw in thinking, is that they should know what I mean, or I've already expressed it and, you should kind of already get the memo. I've expressed it once. I need more help around the house. You should be able to just kind of do with it what you can and figure out what that means. So that doesn't work at all. Do you want to go into the second mistake that we see couples make with expectations?
Well, you could think that it's somehow mismatched because we don't have the same needs, or we don't have the same desires, or we don't see this the same way.
We don't see it eye to eye, right?
Yeah, and maybe that we're not going to. And I mean, we have some examples of that. Some of the people that we're talking to and working with are really bumping up against, I don't think we're going to ever see this the same way. So this is a little bit deeper, but the flawed thinking in this one really has to do with the level of quote unquote solution that you're looking at. Basically, that you're focusing on, I'm going to go with a Simon Sinek, what, how, why. So if the what that we're talking about is your expectation, you're obviously now talking about that. So then the flawed premise is you're only talking about one version of a how, of how that expectation is going to get met now.
Yeah, like they have to do one specific thing.
Yeah, like
to meet that.
In my mind, exactly. So let me just say, so in my mind, I'm a partner and I'm sharing my need or my expectation in this case, and I'm only talking about the one avenue in which this gets fulfilled. That's a flawed premise because the why, the level of the why, like you had mentioned before, well, I want to feel more respected. I want to feel more love. That's why the quality time or the intimacy.
I want to feel important.
Yes.
I want to feel prioritized.
And when you get to the level of the why, there can be, I would say many, but at least more than one how that fulfills on your what. Your what being the unmet expectation, the how being the action, but the why being the experience. I want to feel respected. Okay, well, if that's the case, there's got to be a few more than at least one ways for that to get fulfilled.
Or I want to, if the expectation is I want you to put in more of an effort around the house and with the kids, And in your mind, the only how that you've been envisioning is that they load the dishwasher exactly how you want them to, and they help you wake up the kids, and they haven't been doing that.
They get the crumbs off the counter.
Crumbs are the thing. But then when you drill down as to what you're saying, the why is that I can feel more peace and I can feel like we're a team. You know, like that's the deeper why. Like, hey, I'm wanting to kind of discuss this expectation because I realize I'm showing up with a lot of like anxiety and I'm overwhelmed, and I want to be a peaceful partner and I want to feel like we're a team. So let's discuss some ways that we can meet this expectation.
Exactly what you just said. Now notice how you are on the same team, collaboratively getting resourceful and creative around the how. So again, summarizing this last point, if you think something is a mismatch, it's because you're too focused on the one way that's going to happen.
So good. Okay, third mistake we see with expectations, and then we're going to give you some really good news at the end of this as to the triumph for couples with this, is that the expectations are very often unexpressed. And the flawed thinking that leads to this is, I shouldn't have to say this, right? There's sometimes this belief, even somewhat of a fantasy, that, and don't get me wrong, I used to have this, was if they loved me or if they were paying attention enough, they would know this. Like, so what I hear often is, well, if they were watching me and they saw the amount of work I was doing and all the things I had on my plate, they would know I need X, Y, and Z. And so again, it's like I shouldn't have to vocalize this because they would know it if they really loved me, if they really cared, if they were really paying attention. And that is the flawed thinking that has us then not express our expectations.
And then when they're not expressed, how could they go any other way except unmet?
Exactly.
And when they're unmet, obviously the whole reason we're talking about this is you're now upset and you're frustrated.
So the thing is, you can't expect them to pick up on a memo, right? If you're like huffing and puffing, or you're overwhelmed, or you're, kind of slightly expressing your frustration, that's not enough information for them to pick up on the memo of what you're expecting, wanting, needing, right?
Yeah, please let go of this belief of dropping hints.
Yes.
And that, if my partner was a good enough partner, they'd pick up on the hint and they'd be thoughtful enough and they would be able to, here we go, anticipate what I need. That's what is a good partner. I really want, I don't know if this is 100% true, but I just want to squash this right now. If you want a healthy, empowered relationship, you just have to communicate these unmet expectations.
Or even, I think a bonus idea for this is to get better at anticipating where there could be expectations that you haven't discussed. An easy example that I give to people is a vacation coming up. Every vacation or trip that we go on, to go see our family, we're going to go see Aaron's family in Ohio. Every trip, we discuss our expectations beforehand. Especially with a baby now, it's like, okay, what do you want me to do on the plane to be supportive? Okay, how much time do we expect to be with family versus alone time? What do you want, us to do? Like, do you want us to have some alone time? Right, so we're discussing all the expectations so then we can help prevent, not avoid, but prevent frustrations because we're just kind of like thinking we'll figure it out. Really get better at looking out for the hazards ahead of time. And I know that's like a tall order. And so we do this with couples on our sessions. So before we share the triumph and the really good news.
If I could say one more thing. Because the hazards, I really want you to get a hazard is not about the unforeseen circumstances that will come up. It's just that the unforeseen circumstances bring up expectations that you probably didn't realize you had. So at the end of the day, we're talking about the same thing. The circumstances bring about unmet expectations. So I want to be clear, when we say hazards, it's not about circumstances. It's about, as you said, can we look ahead far enough to identify where our hazards are, meaning where an expectation will go unmet for both of us. And sometimes you just have to go do it. We went on plenty of family vacations where we left not feeling as fulfilled because we realized in the moments we didn't get enough time together, or it felt like we did too many activities, or there were too many demands, or it just didn't fulfill something. So sometimes we had to go in it to realize what our expectation was for the next time.
Yes.
Then we were able to communicate then, hey, we know that this is going to be an expectation. Let's put in place what we need to for this to not go unmet this time.
A huge topic for us around expectations lately has been parenting, like to the detail.
Well, that's a great
How
example.
do we handle wake-ups tonight?
There's a lot that we didn't even know.
That's what we do. Like, are you taking first shift of wake up? Like, we get super detailed with our expectations, you guys. So before we share some really good news and, some huge encouragement for you guys with this, if this is a process you'd like us to walk you through, we have a copywritten process that has visuals. Like, we can't describe the whole breakthrough that we take couples through on this podcast because it requires you to see and go through the experience that we take you through. And we do that on our relationship breakthrough sessions. And every month we open up a few spots. So March spots were filled. It's been awesome. We've connected with some amazing couples. We are opening up just a few more spots in April, right? So we have 5 spots open in April for relationship breakthrough sessions. And on this, you will go through the process and you will leave with new clarity and a new way to handle how to overcome this, even or especially when it feels like you aren't seeing eye to eye and it continues to be persistent. So go to meetthefreemans.com/coaching. You could also message us for the direct link to schedule with us. You pick a slot. So again, meetthefreemans.com/coaching or send us a message. We can get you the scheduling link. It's only $97 and you will have a breakthrough. And then if more support is needed afterwards, we can tell you about how we work with couples ongoingly, but start with that first session. See what our process is like and how it really helps. Now, Aaron, we have some good news, right? Like,
more good
couples who are hearing this, it might be like, whew, okay, well, what if we discuss these expectations and what if it kind of feels as though we see it differently? Does that mean like kind of wah, wah, wah? Is it bad news? No, Aaron, what is the good news?
The good news is, and you will probably only have this realization if you do the session with us to get to this level. But basically, the good news is you want the same thing. I mean, you're in a relationship and basically all human beings pretty much want the same types of things. And when you're in a relationship, well, what do you want? Well, you want to feel connected. You want to feel loved. You want to feel respected.
Prioritized.
You want to feel prioritized, important, significant, safety, security. And, it might range slightly different, but basically, over half of the time, by the time we get to the very bottom of expectations and desires, how many times? Well, like I just said, 50, 60%, they say almost exactly the same thing.
Verbatim. And I'll go, wait, hold on. You guys, let me play this back for you.
You just realize you both now have just said you want to be more connected.
And like they are kind of like, wait, I didn't realize that. In a way, they never identified it or saw it as wanting the same thing. They really did feel like, no, they don't get me. They don't understand. We don't want the same thing. We're never going to overcome this. And when we mirror it back to them and say, wait, you just said this and you just said this, it's like this new level of intimacy and connection opens up of like, oh, wow, I really get it. I see you want what I want experientially. Right now, the how, going back to what you said, might be different.
Yeah.
How to reach that experience. But deep down, the core feeling or experience that you're both reaching for, 99.9% of the time is the same for couples. I know you said 50%, but I think it's way, way more than that.
Well, I was just trying to think back. 99% is a lot.
Most of the time, we'll just say.
But just to say it one more time, the way that you just similarly did, your upset is going to be different. So your upset might be feeling abandoned or left alone or overwhelmed or stressed, where your partners might be disrespected, some version of that, right? So then you get a little bit further, the expectation and the actions are going to be different. So that's why it seems like there's this mismatch. But if you finally get deep enough, that's where you really do want the same thing.
Exactly.
It just really takes some time and some
listening,
not getting triggered by one another, and having people like us to be able to take you to that level, to have that kind of breakthrough in your awareness. Wow, we actually want the same thing. It's really powerful.
Exactly. And so that's the good news. And I promise you, when you really stick with it as humans, you're going to connect and you're going to be like, wow, I really am so glad to know that we do want the same thing. So we hope that this was insightful and helpful for you to really see. I'm telling you, like, we will take just about any topic with couples. And yes, are there other elements, emotional triggers, what happens when the conflict gets escalated? But if we take a lot of the challenges that couples are going through and we keep kind of breaking it down into the simplest ingredients, it's like expectation is the base level. Because even triggers, you get triggered because of an expectation, right? Or an unmatched one. So this is really it, and really excited to hear how you guys discuss this, reflect on this, implement it. Schedule a session with us. Again, 5 spots for April. Go to meetthefreemans.com/coaching. We'd love to support you too. And continue to message us on Instagram. Share with us if this episode really gave you some new ahas and awareness. And by the way, you guys, reviews are the biggest compliments you can give us. So if you are listening on any platform, especially Apple Podcasts, please write a review. That is how we can get this message out to more couples. And it really is what keeps us going. So that would be really appreciated. We love you guys, and we will talk to you on the next episode.